There's a specific moment when you feel it. The air changes. Their eyes shift. The warmth that once greeted you has turned cold. And suddenly, without warning, you've become the enemy. You search your memory desperately, rewinding every conversation, analyzing every interaction, but you find nothing. No betrayal, no cruelty, no mistake. Yet somehow you've become the villain in someone else's story. Maybe it was a friend who slowly grew distant, a colleague who began to undermine you, a family member whose love turned to resentment. You blamed yourself. You thought you must have done something wrong, said something inappropriate, crossed some invisible line. But the more you searched, the less you found. Let me tell you something that will change how you see this forever. You're not imagining it. You're not paranoid. Something real has shifted, and it has almost nothing to do with who you are. It has everything to do with who they refuse to become. What if the hatred you're experiencing is not a reaction to your actions, but to your existence? What if their hostility is not about what you did, but what you represent to their unconscious mind? What if their coldness is actually a mirror reflecting parts of themselves, the whole they cannot bear to see? This is the silent war, the invisible battle beneath human relationships. And once you understand it, you'll never feel confused by sudden rejection again. Before we dive deeper, if this resonates with your soul's journey, please hit that like button and subscribe for more transformational content. Your support helps this message reach other souls who need to hear it. Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist, spent his life mapping the hidden territories of the human mind. He discovered something profound that explains why people can suddenly turn against you without cause. He called it the shadow, the repository of everything you've rejected about yourself. Every quality deemed unacceptable, every desire suppressed, every emotion forbidden, every aspect that didn't fit the image you needed to survive. The shadow contains your buried shame, disowned anger, hidden insecurities, and secret longings. And here's what makes it crucial. It doesn't disappear because you ignore it. Instead, it grows, accumulates power, and eventually finds expression through projection. When someone suddenly hates you, you've become the screen onto which they project their shadow. You didn't choose this role. You simply embodied something that triggered their unconscious. You reflected back a quality they've spent years denying. Maybe your confidence highlighted their insecurity. Maybe your discipline exposed their self-betrayal. Maybe your authenticity revealed their masks. Maybe your freedom reminded them of their chains. You became the mirror showing them who they are, and that reflection was unbearable. So instead of facing their shadow, they attack the mirror. They criticize you, resent you, distance themselves. They create stories about why you're the problem. And they genuinely believe these stories because projection feels real. This is the silent war. It operates beneath awareness. And you never see it coming because the battlefield isn't in words and actions, it's in the unconscious. In the next 45 minutes, we'll explore exactly why this happens, how to recognize it, and how to free yourself from carrying others' shadows. We'll dive deep into Carl Jung, empath and personal development wisdom, examining the psychological mechanisms that turn connection into conflict. Because once you see this pattern, you'll never unsee it. Once you understand the shadow, you'll stop taking rejection personally. You'll stop shrinking yourself to avoid triggering others. You'll stop believing their hatred is evidence of your inadequacy. The silent war is real, but understanding it gives you power, and power gives you freedom. To understand why people suddenly hate you, you need to understand what the shadow actually is. This isn't mystical, it's a real psychological structure in every human being, including you. Imagine your psyche as a house. The rooms you show guests represent your conscious identity, who you think you are, the self you present to the world. But every house has a basement, and in that basement you've stored everything you couldn't keep in the living room. Your shame lives there. Your rage, your weakness, but also your power, your desires, your authenticity. The shadow doesn't just contain negative qualities. It contains everything you were taught to hide, and sometimes what you hid was your greatest strength. Think about how this develops. You're born whole with a full range of emotions and qualities. But as you grow, you receive messages from parents, teachers, culture, religion, society. These messages tell you which parts are acceptable and which must be hidden. If you showed anger and were punished, you exiled anger into the shadow. If you expressed confidence and were called arrogant, you buried confidence. If you showed vulnerability and were called weak, you hid vulnerability. If you displayed ambition and were called selfish, you suppressed ambition. Layer by layer, you constructed your conscious identity by rejecting parts of yourself. You created the persona, the mask, designed to win approval and avoid rejection. Everything that didn't fit went into the basement where it waited in darkness. Here's what Jung discovered: the shadow doesn't disappear. It grows stronger, becomes more primitive, accumulates energy, and demands expression. But because you're unconscious of it, you can't see it directly. Instead, you see it reflected in others. This is projection. When you encounter someone embodying a quality in your shadow, your unconscious reacts. It sees in them what you've buried in yourself. That recognition triggers a powerful emotional response. If you've buried confidence, confident people irritate you. If you've buried ambition, ambitious people threaten you. If you've buried freedom, free people make you resentful. But you won't consciously know that's happening. You'll create a rational story. You'll tell yourself they're arrogant, selfish, irresponsible. You'll find evidence to support your interpretation. You'll genuinely believe your judgment is objective. But it's not, it's projection. You're seeing your shadow reflected, and you're attacking the reflection. This is why people can suddenly hate you without you doing anything wrong. You don't have to harm them. You simply have to embody something they've disowned. Let me give you examples. There's the friend who used to celebrate your victories, but now barely smiles when you succeed. What changed your continued success highlights their stagnation. They buried their ambition years ago, calling themselves realistic. But your achievement awakens that buried ambition. And instead of using that discomfort to grow, they project it onto you. They start seeing your success as luck or manipulation. They can't celebrate you because you've become a mirror reflecting their unlived potential. There's the colleague who undermines everything you say after you started setting boundaries. You stopped working late, stopped saying yes to every request, stopped performing the helpful role. Suddenly they're hostile. Why? Your boundaries exposed how they've abandoned their own. Your self-respect highlighted their self-betrayal. Now you're selfish, difficult, not a team player. There's the family member who criticizes everything after you started living authentically. Maybe you left a miserable career, ended an unfulfilling relationship, or expressed different opinions. Suddenly, you're the problem. Why? Your authenticity revealed their inauthenticity. You stopped wearing the mask, making theirs feel heavier. You chose freedom, highlighting their prison. You became a mirror reflecting their compromise. See the pattern. Their hostility has nothing to do with your actions and everything to do with what those actions awaken in their unconscious. You're not the problem. You're the mirror. And people would rather break the mirror than look at the reflection. This brings us to the most threatening thing you can do: be authentic. Live without masks. Exist as you truly are. Most people live behind carefully constructed personas, protective identities, designed to navigate social reality safely. The persona is who you need to be get along, be accepted, avoid conflict. There's nothing wrong with having a persona. We all need some adaptation. The problem arises when the persona becomes so thick, you lose touch with who you actually are underneath. When you spend decades performing a role, you forget it's a role. You believe the persona is your true self. You become invested in maintaining it because your entire identity depends on it. Then someone comes along who isn't wearing the same mask. Someone who speaks, acts, and exists authentically. Their presence becomes destabilizing. Not because they're attacking anyone, but because they're being real in a world of performance. That realness exposes the exhausting effort everyone else puts into maintaining their false self. This is why authenticity provokes hostility. When you remove your mask, you unconsciously ask everyone, "Why are you still wearing yours?" That's not an attack. It's simply the question that arises naturally in the presence of authenticity. And most people don't want to answer. They don't want to admit they're performing or confront how much energy they spend on image management. So instead of looking inward, they look outward. They make you the problem. They call you naive, attention-seeking, self-absorbed. They create a narrative where your authenticity is a character flaw. And they believe this because admitting the truth would be too painful. The truth is, your authenticity reminds them of their inauthenticity. Your courage highlights their fear. Your freedom exposes their self-imposed limitations. Carl Jung empath and personal development work requires understanding this dynamic isn't personal, it's archetypal. The individual who breaks from the collective, who dares to individuate, who chooses authenticity over conformity, has always faced resistance. Authenticity threatens systems built on performance and pretense. But there's another layer: invisible power dynamics operating in every relationship. And when these shift, the silent war intensifies. In any relationship, there's an unspoken hierarchy. Someone leads. Someone follows. Someone validates. Someone seeks validation. Someone holds influence. Someone is influenced. These roles are rarely discussed, but they shape everything. Both people unconsciously know their place in this invisible structure. When that structure shifts, tension arises. The person who felt in control senses they're losing influence. The person who relied on your weakness feels threatened by your growth. The individual who thrived on your dependence becomes hostile at your independence. Think about setting a boundary with someone who's been crossing yours for years. You're not attacking them, you're defining what's acceptable. But they react as if you've betrayed them. Why? Your boundary disrupts the unspoken power dynamic. They had power to take from you, demand from you, impose on you. Your boundary removes that power. The relationship is no longer on their terms. Or think about succeeding where you previously struggled. People who felt superior suddenly become uncomfortable. Not because your success harms them, but because it changes the hierarchy. They were above you. Now you're equal or ahead. The power dynamic shifted without their consent. So they react with hostility or withdrawal. These power dynamics operate silently, making them dangerous. People don't say, "I'm angry because I'm losing control over you." They don't admit, "I resent you because I can no longer feel superior." Instead, they rationalize. They find reasons. They create stories about why you're problematic. Understanding this invisible battlefield changes everything. The hatred you experience is not about your worth, it's about shifting currents of power. It's about the fragile sense of control people protect at all costs. It's about unspoken hierarchies governing human connection. When you see this clearly, you stop internalizing their hostility. You stop believing their narratives. You understand their war is not with you. It's with the version of you that no longer plays the role they needed. The awakening is realizing most human conflict is rooted in unconscious projection and invisible power dynamics. Once you see this, you can never unsee it. And that seeing becomes the foundation of your freedom. Now let's explore specific ways this silent war manifests. Because projection doesn't happen randomly, and there are patterns, trigger specific qualities you might embody that consistently provoke hostility. Achievement should be celebrated, right? But it's one of the most reliable triggers for resentment. We live in a comparison culture amplified by social media. Your achievements are broadcast to hundreds or thousands, and every time you share a win, someone unconsciously measures themselves against you. For some, your success inspires. For others, it becomes a mirror reflecting their passivity, their unfulfilled potential, their choices to play small. That reflection is painful. The pain of comparison is rooted in shame. When someone sees you succeed, where they've failed to try, where they've given up, where they've convinced themselves, it's impossible they experience sudden confrontation with their self-betrayal. Most cannot tolerate that feeling, so they project it onto you. Suddenly, your success isn't really success. It's luck, privilege, connections, timing, something external you didn't earn. This protects them from the painful truth that your achievement represents their avoidance. Or they create a different narrative: you sacrificed too much. You must be unhappy, stressed, neglectful of other life areas. This allows them to feel superior in their lack of achievement. They're more balanced, more present, more connected to what really matters. Watch how people respond to your wins. Those who immediately diminish your achievement, who find reasons why it doesn't count, whose shadow has been triggered. They're not bad people, they're unconscious people. Their projection tells you nothing about your worth and everything about their internal conflict. To be authentic means living without constant self-monitoring, speaking without calculating for approval, making choices based on internal alignment rather than external expectation. You've stopped performing for an audience, stopped editing yourself for palatability, stopped pretending to be what others need. This is incredibly threatening to people still performing. The effort required to maintain a false self is enormous. Constantly monitoring words, behavior, image, calculating, adjusting, suppressing anything that might be disapproved of. It's exhausting but invisible because they've done it so long. Then you come along simply existing as yourself. Not calculating, not performing, not monitoring, just being. Your ease exposes their effort. Your freedom highlights their prison. Your authenticity reveals their masks. Their unconscious registers this as danger. Because if you can exist authentically and survive, if you can remove the mask and still be accepted, what does that say about their effort? It says it might not be necessary. It says they might be imprisoning themselves. So they attack your authenticity. They call it attention-seeking narcissism, immaturity, naivety. They frame your authenticity as dysfunction. This allows them to maintain their masks without questioning why they're wearing them. The irony: authentic people are often the least self-focused in the room. They're not constantly calculating how they're perceived because they've let go of that exhausting task. But to the person still performing, this lack of self-consciousness looks like arrogance. They can't imagine not monitoring yourself unless you're completely self-involved. This is projection. They're attributing to you what they do, constantly obsessing over image and perception. But they project that obsession onto you and call it narcissism. When you change, evolve, heal, and become different, people often react as if you've betrayed them. Why would personal growth feel like betrayal? Because relationships contain unspoken agreements. We'll stay small together. We'll complain together. We'll struggle together. We'll accept our limitations together. When you break that agreement by growing, you've violated the social contract. People comfortable in shared smallness feel abandoned. You were supposed to stay where they are, validate their stagnation by remaining stagnant. This is why people in recovery lose entire social circles. Why someone who gets therapy finds old friendships dissolving. Why the person who invests in education or changes careers faces hostility from those who claim to love them. The hostility is about what your transformation implies about their stagnation. Your proof that change is possible. Your evidence that healing is available. You're a mirror showing them that the excuses they've made for years might not be valid. So they create a different narrative. You've changed as if change were a crime. You're not the person I knew, as if growth were betrayal. You think you're better than us now, projecting their inferiority onto your journey. The painful truth, you haven't betrayed them. You've outgrown the version of yourself that fit comfortably into their worldview. They're grieving that old version not because it was better, but because it made them more comfortable. Few things provoke hostility faster than a clearly stated boundary from someone who previously had none. When you finally say no after years of yes, when you refuse to carry more than your share, when you stop being available for draining demands, people who benefited from your lack of boundaries react with shock and anger. Not because you're harming them, but because you've removed their access to you. You've revoked their unearned privilege. Many relationships are built on one person's compliance and another's entitlement. The entitled person doesn't see it this way. They believe they're asking for normal, reasonable things. But they're actually leveraging guilt, obligation, and your fear of conflict to get what they want. When you set a boundary, you break that leverage. You're saying, I'm no longer available to be used. I'm no longer willing to sacrifice my well-being for your convenience. I'm no longer operating from guilt. The entitled person experiences this as rejection, cruelty, selfishness. They'll accuse you of changing, becoming cold, no longer caring. They'll frame your boundary as moral failure. They'll make you the villain with complete conviction because they genuinely believe they're the victim. But here's what's really happening. Your boundary revealed the one-sided nature of the relationship. It showed they were taking more than giving. It exposed their entitlement. Instead of acknowledging this and working to correct it, they attack your boundary, hoping to restore their access. This is why boundary setting often costs relationships. Not because boundaries are wrong, but because some relationships were built on your lack of them. When you finally claim your right to self-protection, those relationships cannot survive. They were never based on mutual respect. They were based on your compliance. You can embody qualities that highlight another person's shame, even when you're not doing anything exceptional. Consider the person disgusted by emotional expression. They mock people who cry, talk about feelings, show vulnerability. Beneath that disgust is a shadow stuffed with unfelt emotions, ungrieved losses, unexpressed pain. They've spent years building walls around their feelings, telling themselves emotional control is strength. Then they encounter someone who feels openly, cries without apology, speaks about pain without shame. That person becomes intolerable. Why? Because that person is doing what they cannot allow themselves to do. That person is free where they are imprisoned. Instead of recognizing their own emotional repression and working to heal it, they project disgust onto the emotionally expressive person. They call them weak, dramatic, attention-seeking. This projection protects them from facing their buried feelings. Or consider the person threatened by rest, by leisure, by someone who doesn't constantly hustle. They shame people who take breaks, prioritize self-care, refuse to be productive every moment. Beneath that judgment is a shadow carrying the exhaustion. They won't acknowledge the rest. They won't allow the fear that if they stop moving, they'll collapse. When they encounter someone who rests without guilt, who sets work aside, who prioritizes being overdoing, that person becomes a target. Not because that person is lazy, but because they're modeling self-compassion the other has denied themselves. This is why Carl Jung, empath, and personal development work requires deep self-examination. You must ask, what triggers unusual intensity in me? What qualities provoke disproportionate disgust? What do I mock with unexpected vigor? These reactions are your shadow speaking, showing you where you've rejected parts of yourself and are now projecting that rejection onto others. Jung understood individual psychology exists within larger collective psychology. We're not just individuals, we're members of families, communities, cultures, nations. These collectives have their own unconscious, their own shadows, their own unspoken rules. Every group has invisible agreements about what can be thought, said, done. These agreements maintain group cohesion, create shared identity and reality. They're enforced not through written rules, but through social pressure, through inclusion and exclusion, approval and rejection. When you violate these invisible agreements, when you think independently, question inherited beliefs, refuse to accept the group narrative, you trigger a primal response. The collective experiences you as a threat, not because you're attacking anyone, but because your divergence exposes the arbitrary nature of collective agreements. You prove the rules aren't absolute, the beliefs aren't universal. Conformity is a choice, not a necessity. This is why people turn against you with shocking intensity when you break from groupthink. Whether political, religious, cultural, or ideological, the moment you step outside the tribal boundary, you become the enemy. The hatred you face is not proportional to your actual transgression. It's proportional to the threat you pose to the collective's stability. Think about how quickly online mobs form around anyone expressing a heterodox opinion. How families exile members who leave the faith or vote differently. How workplaces marginalize employees who refuse to participate in toxic norms or speak truth about problems others want to ignore. The intensity of rejection reveals the power of the collective shadow. You've become the scapegoat, the one onto whom the group projects everything it cannot acknowledge about itself. The group will sacrifice you to maintain its illusion of unity. Envy is the silent killer of relationships because it's the emotion people are least willing to admit. To confess envy is to confess inadequacy, and pride won't allow it. Envy lives in silence. It doesn't announce itself. Instead, it expresses itself through subtle hostility, withdrawal, backhanded compliments, silent sabotage. You'll notice someone who once celebrated your victories now barely acknowledges them. Someone who used to reach out stops initiating contact. Someone who championed you now finds small ways to undermine you. These are signs of envy that cannot speak its name. The cruel irony, envy often strikes closest to home. Strangers can admire you freely because there's no basis for comparison. But those nearest to you in similar life circumstances, who started where you started, feel the sting of comparison most intensely. Your progress illuminates their stagnation. Your courage highlights their fear. Your achievements expose their avoidance. Because they cannot admit this, because envy is too shameful to acknowledge, they create alternative explanations for their hostility. You've changed. You've become arrogant. You've forgotten where you came from. These narratives allow them to hate you while maintaining their innocence. They're not envious, they're just disappointed in who you've become. But the truth, you haven't become disappointing. You've become someone who makes them uncomfortable with their own choices. That discomfort left unexamined ferments into hidden resentment that slowly poisons the relationship. Understanding these 7 triggers gives you a map of the invisible battlefield. When someone suddenly turns against you, you can ask, which trigger did I activate? What shadow did I reflect? What unspoken agreement did I break? What power dynamic did I shift? In asking these questions, you free yourself from the exhausting cycle of self-blame and confusion. You begin to see their hatred is not evidence of your inadequacy. It's evidence of their unconsciousness. It's a mirror reflecting their internal war, a war they've displaced onto you because facing it within themselves feels impossible. Now comes the most important part, integration. Understanding why people project their shadows onto you is valuable, but understanding alone doesn't heal. Integration does. Integration means taking this knowledge and transforming it into lived wisdom. Recognition means seeing projection for what it is in the moment it's happening. When someone suddenly turns cold, makes a cutting remark, withdraws support, your automatic response is probably to wonder what you did wrong. That's the conditioned response keeping you trapped in self-blame. Recognition requires a different question. Instead of, "What did I do wrong?" you ask, "What did I awaken in them?" Instead of searching for your mistake, you look for the triggered shadow. Instead of internalizing their hostility, you recognize it as projection. This shift in perception is profoundly liberating. It doesn't mean you never make mistakes or are never actually at fault. It means you stop automatically assuming every negative reaction is evidence of your inadequacy. Here's how to develop recognition. When someone's response feels disproportionate to what actually happened, that's projection. When someone attributes to you motives, you don't have qualities, you don't possess actions you didn't take, that's projection. When someone reacts with intensity that doesn't match the situation, their shadow is probably speaking. Let's say you share an achievement with a friend, and they respond with, "Must be nice," in a sharp tone. The old pattern, internalize it. Wonder if you were bragging, feel guilty for succeeding, start explaining or diminishing your achievement to make them comfortable. The new pattern, recognize the disproportionate response. Understand your achievement triggered something in them. Realize their comment isn't really about you, it's about their internal comparison, their unfulfilled potential, their shadow material around success. Don't take it personally. Don't shrink yourself. Simply note the projection and move on. This doesn't mean you become cold or disconnected. It means you stop carrying emotional burdens that don't belong to you. You stop doing the impossible work of managing everyone else's shadows. You free yourself from trying to exist in a way that triggers no one, which is impossible anyway. But if others project onto you, you project yours onto others. This is not something only unconscious people do. This is something all people do until they become aware enough to catch it. If you're going to truly free yourself from this dynamic, you must examine your own projections. This is where Carl Jung, empath, and personal development requires radical honesty. Ask yourself, what qualities do I despise in others with unusual intensity? What triggers me disproportionately? Who irritates me beyond what the situation warrants? What do I judge harshly, mock, consistently condemn automatically? These reactions are breadcrumbs leading to your shadow. The qualities you cannot tolerate in others are often the qualities you've rejected in yourself. If you're intensely irritated by people who seem lazy, who don't hustle, who prioritize rest, ask yourself, have I rejected my own need for rest? Have I buried my desire to slow down? Have I made my worth dependent on constant achievement? Am I afraid that if I stop pushing, I'll collapse or be revealed as someone who doesn't actually matter? That's your shadow speaking. The laziness you despise in others is actually your disowned need for rest. Once you recognize this, once you integrate it, something shifts. You stop being triggered by other people's rest. You stop judging their pace. You've made peace with your own need to sometimes slow down. Or if you're intensely bothered by people who seem arrogant, who take up space, who speak with confidence, ask yourself, have I rejected my own power? Have I made myself small to avoid criticism? Have I silenced my voice to avoid being called arrogant? Am I afraid of my own strength? That's your shadow. The arrogance you despise in others is actually your disowned confidence. Once you integrate this, once you reclaim your right to take up space, you stop being triggered by others who do. Keep a journal of your triggers. When you feel disproportionate irritation, disgust, or judgment, write it down. Describe the quality that bothers you. Then ask, where does even 1% of this quality exist in me? How have I rejected this quality in myself? What would happen if I allowed myself to express this quality in healthy ways? What am I afraid of if I integrate this quality? Be brutally honest. If you judge someone's laziness, admit where you also want to rest, but won't allow yourself. If you judge someone's confidence, admit where you also want to speak up, but silence yourself. If you judge someone's vulnerability, admit where you also want to cry, but hold it in. This practice reveals your shadow, and revelation is the first step toward integration. Once you see what you've been projecting, you can start reclaiming it. You can start allowing yourself to rest without guilt, to speak without apology, to feel without shame, to want without self-condemnation. Integration of your shadow doesn't mean becoming someone you're not. It means becoming more fully yourself. It means retrieving the exiled parts of your psyche and making peace with them. It means no longer splitting yourself into acceptable and unacceptable parts. It means wholeness. This involves recognizing what power you've projected onto others. Think about how much of your self-worth has been dependent on others' approval. How much of your confidence has been contingent on others' validation? How much of your identity has been shaped by others' opinions? When someone rejects you and it devastates you completely, that's often because you'd projected your sense of value onto their approval. You made them the mirror that tells you whether you're worthy. When they withdraw that approval, you experience it as the loss of your worth itself. But their approval was never the source of your worth. Your worth is inherent. It exists independent of anyone's opinion. What you're actually grieving when they reject you is not the loss of worth, but the loss of the fantasy that external validation could ever make you feel permanently secure. Ask yourself, whose approval have I been chasing? Whose opinion have I made more important than my own? Whose validation have I been seeking to fill an emptiness that can only be filled from within? Often the person who triggers the most pain with their rejection is a stand-in for an earlier wound. They represent the parent who withheld love, the peer group that excluded you, the authority figure who criticized you. When they reject you now, you're feeling the accumulated pain of every rejection that preceded this one. Here's a powerful practice. Write a letter to yourself from the person whose rejection hurt most. Have them say everything you wish they would say. Apologize, see you. Validate your worth, express the love you longed for. Write it all out without holding back. Then read that letter and notice what you were longing to hear. Notice what words would have healed the wound. Notice what validation you were seeking from them. Now write another letter, this time from your wisest, most compassionate self. Give yourself everything you were seeking from them. Affirm your worth. Validate your experience. See yourself clearly. Express unconditional love. Offer the acceptance you've been chasing externally. This practice reveals something essential. You already know what you need. You already possess the capacity to give it to yourself. You don't actually need them to change. You need you to reclaim the power you gave away. You need you to become the source of your own validation. Stop trying to fix relationships with people who consistently project their shadow onto you. This is not about punishment, it's about self-protection. Not every relationship can be healed through understanding. Some people are so unconscious, so committed to their projections, so invested in making you the container for their shadow, that the healthiest response is to step away. When someone has made you their shadow screen, your attempts to fix the relationship only deepen the projection. They need you to be the villain. They need you to be the problem. Your efforts to prove otherwise just give them more material to misinterpret. So stop trying. Stop explaining. Stop defending. Stop seeking their understanding or approval. These efforts feed the dynamic, not resolve it. Instead, create space. Reduce contact to what's absolutely necessary. Stop sharing your inner life with them. Stop seeking their validation. Stop making yourself available for their projections. This is not coldness, it's boundary setting. It's recognizing your energy is precious, and some people do not deserve access to it. Especially people who use that access to attack you, diminish you, or project their unintegrated shadow onto you. Practical steps: reduce communication to essential interactions only. Stop initiating contact. Stop trying to maintain warmth that isn't reciprocated. Stop performing closeness that isn't real. Mute or unfollow them on social media without announcement. Stop defending yourself when they accuse you of things you didn't do. Defense feeds projection. Silence is often more powerful. Let them believe what they need to believe. Your truth doesn't require their agreement. Redirect the energy you were spending on fixing that relationship toward relationships that actually nourish you. Stop pouring water into a bucket with a hole in the bottom. You need people who see you accurately. People who aren't projecting their shadow onto you. People who can hold space for your complexity without needing you to be simple. People who celebrate your growth without feeling threatened. People who challenge you from love, not competition. What does a healthy witness look like? They allow you to be contradictory. They don't need you to fit into a box. They can hold the tension of your multiple truths without trying to resolve them into something simpler. They don't need you to perform a role. They let you be whoever you are in this moment without making that your permanent identity. They can hold space for your pain without trying to fix it, minimize it, or compare it. They simply witness. They simply see. And that seeing is healing. They've done their own shadow work. They can recognize when they're being triggered and take responsibility for their reactions. They don't make their discomfort your problem. They own their projections. They challenge you from love, not competition. When they offer feedback, it's to help you grow, not diminish you. They celebrate your victories without needing to one-up you or diminish your achievement. Where do you find these people? Often in communities that value depth and consciousness. In therapy spaces. In workshops focused on shadow work and personal development. In spiritual communities that prioritize inner work over image management. In circles of people who've also been through the fire of rejection and transformation. You'll recognize them because being around them feels different. You don't have to monitor yourself. You don't have to calculate. You don't have to perform. You can simply be. And that being is enough. Welcomed, celebrated. Build relationships with these people. Invest in these connections. Let them become your foundation. Because when the silent war intensifies, when projections multiply, when you're surrounded by people determined to misunderstand you, these witnesses will remind you of your truth. They'll reflect back an accurate image when everyone else is showing you a distorted mirror. The body holds the pain of rejection in ways the mind cannot fully process. You can understand projection intellectually and still feel visceral pain. You can recognize shadow dynamics and still carry tension in your chest, shoulders, stomach. Integration requires working with the body, not just the mind. When you're rejected, your nervous system interprets it as a survival threat. This is biology. Humans are social creatures. For most of our evolutionary history, social rejection meant death. To be cast out was to be vulnerable to predators, starvation exposure. So your body responds to rejection with the same alarm it would respond to physical danger. Your heart races. Your breathing becomes shallow. Muscles tense. Stress hormones flood your system. Digestion shuts down. Sleep becomes disrupted. These are not signs of weakness. These are signs your body is doing exactly what it's designed to do when it perceives threat. The problem is, your conscious mind knows you're not actually in mortal danger, but your nervous system hasn't gotten the message. It's still operating from ancient programming, Until you work with the body to complete the stress cycle to discharge the activation to signal safety, the pain will continue living in your tissues. When rejection happens, you need to help your body understand that you survived, that the social rupture, while painful, is not a death sentence, that you can exist outside of their approval and still be safe, still be whole, still be worthy. This is where somatic practices become essential tools for healing. These aren't luxuries or optional additions, they're fundamental to integration, because trauma and pain live in the body first and the mind second. Somatic practices place your hand on your heart when you feel the urge to shrink yourself. Feel your own touch. Breathe slowly. Tell your body, I'm here. I'm safe. I'm not abandoned. Do this many times throughout the day. You're training your nervous system to recognize that rejection is painful, but not fatal. Practice taking up space physically. Stand with your feet hip-width apart. Stretch your arms wide. Breathe deeply into your belly. Speak aloud even when alone. Move through your space without apologizing or minimizing your presence. Your body learns through repetition that it's safe to be big, to be seen, to exist fully. Move the emotion through your body instead of thinking about it. Dance, shake, run, hit a punching bag. Do yoga. Let your body discharge the activation that's been building. Emotion is literally energy in motion. When you block that motion through stillness and rumination, the energy gets trapped. Practice boundary setting somatically. Say no out loud when you're alone. Feel how it feels in your body to refuse. Notice where you tense up. Notice where you want to collapse. Stay with the discomfort until your body learns that boundary setting doesn't lead to annihilation. Engage in practices that signal safety to your nervous system. Warm baths, soft blankets, gentle music, time in nature, connection with animals. These aren't luxuries, and these are nervous system regulation tools. They tell your body, we are not in danger, we can rest. Sleep becomes non-negotiable. Your body heals in rest. Your nervous system recalibrates in sleep. When you're processing rejection, when you're integrating shadow material, you need more rest than usual. Honor that need without guilt. This is where you locate your personal story within larger archetypal patterns of human experience. You're not just someone who got rejected, you're someone on a hero's journey. You're in the initiatory phase of transformation. Every culture has myths about the hero who must leave the village to find their true self. Every tradition has stories about the scapegoat who carries what the collective cannot face. Every mythology includes the truth teller who gets exiled for seeing what others refuse to see. Every spiritual path includes death and rebirth, the burning away of the false self to reveal the true self. You are living these archetypal patterns. Your rejection is not random. It's not evidence of unworthiness. It's part of an initiatory process humans have been moving through for thousands of years. You're being initiated into deeper selfhood. You're being called to individuation. You're being forced to choose between belonging to others and belonging to yourself. This doesn't minimize your pain. Archetypes are lived experiences. The hero actually leaves the village. The scapegoat actually carries the burden. The truth teller actually faces exile. These are real experiences with real pain. But locating them within the larger pattern does two things. First, it removes shame. You're not being rejected because you're uniquely flawed. You're being rejected because you're moving through a universal pattern. Every person who has chosen authenticity over approval has faced this. Every person who has grown beyond their origin has experienced this loss. You're not alone. You're part of an ancient lineage of individuals who dared to become themselves. Second, it reveals purpose. This rejection is not meaningless suffering. It's the fire that burns away what's false so what's true can emerge. It's the death of the small self so the authentic self can be born. It's the price of transformation, and transformation is sacred. Ask yourself, what myth am I living? What archetypal pattern is playing out in my life? Am I the hero leaving the village? Am I the phoenix burning before rebirth? Am I the seed breaking open in darkness before emerging into light? Am I the warrior being tested before claiming my power? Write this story. Draw it. Speak it. Embody it. Let yourself be the protagonist of an ancient tale. Let your rejection become part of a larger narrative of transformation. When you can see your pain through mythological eyes, it stops being merely personal and becomes transpersonal. It stops being merely suffering and becomes initiation. Integration is not a one-time achievement. It's an ongoing practice. You'll catch yourself projecting. You'll notice moments where you've given your power away. You'll feel the pull to shrink yourself back into old patterns. And that's okay. Integration is not perfection. It's increasing consciousness. It's catching yourself faster, correcting course more quickly, returning to center more readily. The goal is not to never be triggered. The goal is to recognize when you're triggered and choose a conscious response instead of an automatic reaction. The goal is not to never be hurt by rejection. The goal is to not let rejection convince you of unworthiness. The goal is not to never project. The goal is to own your projections and retrieve them before they damage relationships. You've walked through the fire. You've faced the shadow. You've recognized projection. You've integrated what you've learned. Now comes the harvest. Now comes the transformation. Now you discover who you're becoming through this painful, sacred process. Someone who no longer abandons themselves for acceptance. Someone who would rather be alone in truth than surrounded in pretense. Someone who knows the difference between their worth and others' opinions. Someone who can be misunderstood without collapsing into self-doubt. You're becoming someone who trusts their perception even when others gaslight them. Someone who sets boundaries without guilt. Someone who walks away from dynamics that require self-betrayal. Someone who chooses depth over breadth in their relationships. You're becoming someone who can sit with their own shadow without projecting it onto others. Someone who takes responsibility for their triggers. Someone who does the work of integration even when it's uncomfortable. Someone who's committed to consciousness over comfort. You're becoming someone who embodies rather than explains. You no longer need to justify your choices. You no longer need to prove your worth. You no longer need to convince anyone of your value. You simply exist as you are, and that's enough. Those who can see you will. Those who can't won't, and that's no longer your concern. Imagine moving through the world unburdened by others' projections. Imagine the lightness of no longer managing everyone's perceptions. Imagine the peace of knowing their hatred cannot touch your worth because your worth is no longer dependent on their approval. Imagine surrounding yourself with people who celebrate your authenticity, who champion your growth, who hold space for your complexity. Imagine relationships built on mutual seeing, genuine care, and shared commitment to consciousness. Imagine the depth of connection that becomes possible when both people are doing their shadow work. This is not fantasy, this is available to you now, as you are, in the middle of the mess, in the midst of the pain, while you're still integrating, while you're still learning. This transformation is not a destination, it's a direction, and you're already walking it. The silent war doesn't end because people stop projecting onto you. It ends because you stop believing their projections. It ends because you finally, fully, courageously choose yourself. It ends because you recognize that their narrative about you is not your truth. It ends because you know bone deep that their inability to see you clearly is not evidence of your inadequacy, it's evidence of their unconsciousness. And you are free to shine anyway. Your authenticity is contagious. Every person who watches you choose truth over approval, who sees you set boundaries without guilt, who witnesses you walk away from false belonging, receives permission to do the same. You're not just healing yourself, you're modeling a different way of being human. A way that chooses wholeness over performance, authenticity over image, self-loyalty over people-pleasing. The people who rejected you were preparing the space for those who will recognize you. The relationships that dissolved were making room for deeper connections. The false belonging that fell away was clearing the path for true community. Everything that left was supposed to leave. And everyone who remains is here because they can actually see you. You are not alone in this journey. Every person who has chosen individuation over conformity has walked this path. Every person who has dared to become themselves has faced rejection. Every person doing serious Carl Jung empath and personal development work has experienced the pain of outgrowing old relationships and the discomfort of standing in their truth before the right people arrive. Their projection cannot diminish your light. It only reveals their darkness. Their hatred is not evidence of your failure, it's evidence of their fear. Their rejection is not proof of your inadequacy, it's proof that you've outgrown the container they built for you. You are the mirror they couldn't bear to look into. You are the question they weren't ready to answer. You are the possibility they were too afraid to claim. And that is not your burden to carry. That is their journey to walk. Your only responsibility is to keep becoming more fully yourself, to keep integrating your shadow, to keep choosing authenticity, to keep setting boundaries, to keep growing, to keep shining. The world doesn't need more people who have learned to hide their light to make others comfortable. The world needs more people who have learned to shine brighter despite the discomfort it causes. The world needs more people who refuse to carry others' shadows. The world needs more people who choose truth over belonging. The world needs you exactly as you are. Messy, complex, growing, real. Welcome home to yourself. Welcome to the other side of the silent war. Welcome to the freedom that comes from finally choosing you. The transformation is complete. Not because you're perfect, but because you're willing. Not because you've arrived, but because you're walking. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're asking better questions. You are exactly where you need to be, and you are becoming exactly who you're meant to be. The silent war is over. You won. Not by defeating them, but by refusing to abandon yourself. Not by changing their minds, but by trusting your own. Not by earning their approval, but by reclaiming your worth from their hands. This is your victory. Claim it, embody it, live it. You are free.